Good afternoon, everybody. It's a wonderful Thursday afternoon where I am, and I hope it is for you as well. My name is Sarah Wolf. I'm the Advocacy Director with the Minnesota Environmental Partnership, and I'm really glad you're able to join us today for a session on understanding the Line 3 aquifer breach and spills. We have two really distinguished scientists with us and a wonderful member, Don Goodwin, a member of the community that's been impacted, and they will have great information for us today. We are going to have your chat questions directed to a group of us so that we can field them and have a good question and answer period about halfway through this program. So please feel free to submit those questions in the chat. Today we have with us Jeff Broberg. Jeff, and if you'd move that slide back, it would be wonderful. And I'm also just going to say thank you everyone for being here and for your patience. We put this, and mostly Jeff and Laura and Don have put this information together for you quickly. We found out about the situation last Friday, and they've been diving into reports and understanding information so that you can be part of the conversation and have information that might otherwise be hard to pick out of some of these reports. So thanks for your patience with us as we go through this information. Jeffrey Broberg is a Minnesota licensed professional geologist with over 30 years of groundwater experience in Minnesota. Dr. Laura Triplett is an associate professor of geology with 25 years of surface water and groundwater experience in Minnesota. And Don Goodwin is a representative from the Indigenous Environmental Network and co-founder of RISE Coalition, Resilient Indigenous Sisters Engaging. She's also a resident of the area in Clearbrook. With that, I'm just going to pass it over to you right away, Jeff.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, I'm Jeff Broberg. I'm a licensed professional geologist with over 30 years of experience dealing with groundwater issues in Minnesota. I received the report of the DNR restoration plan and penalties against Enbridge for rupturing an aquifer last Saturday. And we've been working on this to understand it. It's an issue that I have quite a lot of experience with. I just want to put you in the picture of where we're at. If you can see my cursor here, here's the 330 miles of pipeline over Minnesota, and it's designed to carry the heavy tar sands from Alberta, Canada. And it's significant because this oil is heavier than water. It sinks, it doesn't float on the top, so it can create some special challenges dealing in aquatic environments. And unfortunately, it's routed through treaty lands, crossing over 220 bodies of water, wetlands, rivers, streams, a variety of aquatic resources. And not only is the construction a risk, but the operation of the pipelines becomes a risk. People have become very concerned about constructing this pipeline through these sensitive environments, wild rice, wetlands, headwaters, and very concerned about how the permitting and monitoring of this has gone. So I'm going to go through my presentation. Once again, this is the location of the entire pipeline as it crosses through, and my cursor is in the area of Clearbrook, Minnesota, just outside, and this is approximately where the ruptured aquifer occurred. This is a picture of the Clearbrook terminal and a representation of where Line 3 is coming from the west and northwest and into the terminal and wrapping around it. But significant to this, I wanted to point out this large wetland complex that the pipeline goes through, and some special outstanding resource waters, the calcareous fens that occur off to the east side of the terminal itself. This is a similar picture with the details of those fens. This is a complicated view, but it's part of the construction plans that show where the original breach was, and the secondary breach. And what this is showing, these yellow hatch lines, are existing pipelines. And in this area, they had to do what's called a hot crossing. These pipelines are active, and they were required to do a boring of the pipe beneath those other lines in a safe manner. And they didn't disclose the difficulty of doing this in the original construction plans. This is what happens when you breach an aquifer. This is a picture of a sunken backhoe that had broken down through an artesian aquifer and ended up with upwelling water. It's a hazardous construction situation because it rapidly turns the land into quicksand. The hydraulic pressure that occurs in this setting pushes water up from the surface. In this case, the aquifer is down at a depth of 30 feet, and the contractors dug down to within 12 feet of that before the aquifer breached and it broke out onto the surface. So I'm going to turn this over for a minute to Laura, and she's got a great animation for this that she's going to talk through on exactly the importance of these water resources and how this breach has occurred.
Thanks. And as we're moving over to Laura, Jeff, if you'd mute, that'd be great. And I think everyone else is probably already muted. Great. And thank you, Laura.
Hi, are you seeing my PowerPoint screen? You are, Jeff? Okay. So the idea with this aquifer is that there's several layers under the ground up in northern Minnesota. And at this location, there's a confining aquifer, or a confining layer about 18 feet to 30 feet deep down in the ground. Below that is a sand and gravel aquifer where water can flow really easily, and it's pressurized because of the confining layer above. So what happens in some places is that naturally it can be thinner in some places. Water can percolate up to the surface and create special ecosystems like calcareous fens to form. What Enbridge did was dig a deep trench, and they dug some even deeper sheet pilings that punched down into that confining layer. And they had to do this when you're digging a trench in very unstable soils. Those walls are liable to collapse, and so you need to stabilize them so that it's safe for the workers. We knew this was going to be not an easy place for them to do this type of construction. At some point, Enbridge removed the sheet pilings and backfilled the trench. And then, either then or initially, water punched up through the confining layer and came to the surface and filled that trench. In fact, the water was under so much pressure that it would have risen about 10 feet above the ground surface if it was in a pipe. It created a massive boiling spring of quicksand. We've seen that in some photos. And the problem with this is that as that sand and gravel aquifer loses pressure, because of new outflow from this, the water source for fens or nearby streams and lakes may dry up as that aquifer gets drained. So back to you, Jeff.
Thanks. I'm going to share my screen again. And what we have here is a cascading series of failures that started really with the design and permitting. The Enbridge, I'm not being able to advance my slides here for some reason. Can you help me with that somehow? Sorry, let me try that once again. I apologize. Went through this again, but you can see the significance of the calcareous fen and how the pressure release here could impair the fen itself. So we need to find a way to be able to advance this.
Jeff, would you like me to share my screen and go off of my screen?
Could you perhaps do that? That might be helpful.
Sure, I will do that right here. Okay. Are you seeing the picture of aquifer rupture?
Yeah, okay, the aquifer rupture. The problem is that the design specifications for this project that were reviewed by the Department of Natural Resources said they were only going to dig an 8-foot deep trench. In fact, this was a subject of the permitting because the DNR was worried about the fens, and they actually wrote a letter of saying, well, as long as it's an 8-foot deep trench, there's no risk to the fen. You're not going to rupture the aquifer, and they gave Enbridge the no impact to the fen letter back in December of 2020. When the construction managers got out here, they said, well, that's not exactly what's going to happen because 2 existing pipelines that have petroleum flowing through them require us to dig a trench 18 feet deep. This is what it looked like on January 23rd, 2 days after they did the excavation, digging down to 18 feet and created this large pool of quicksand with large volumes of water flow. Estimations of the water flow have varied over time from 65,000 gallons to 108,000 gallons of flow a day. Let's go to the next slide. Can I control the slides now? I guess I can.
No, you can't. It's on my screen.
Okay. This is a picture of what the area looked like in July. One of the main problems with this, once again, was that nobody notified the DNR of this aquifer breach. Neither Enbridge, their contractors, or the independent environmental monitors alerted the DNR. The daily inspection reports apparently noted a problem with dewatering. Nobody mentioned the fact that an aquifer had been breached, relieving this pressure and large amounts of water. And that spill went on for many months. This is what it looked like on July 9th. This leak of the aquifer has continued to this day, and it wasn't until last week, actually, that the DNR ordered them to fix this and to seal this aquifer back up so that we're not losing the aquifer pressure in the fins. Next slide. Environment and water resource protection requires a number of factors. First is sincere prevention measures. Enbridge took a different approach. They decided, well, this is a problem. We need to get the pipe in. We're going to pound sheet piles around this down to a depth of 28 feet. We're going to put a dewatering wells in, dewater this long trench that has the sheet pile around it, get the pipe installed, pull the sheet pile, and we'll deal with the rest of the problem with this leaky aquifer, this ruptured aquifer later. Clear plans and contractors that follow the rules. They had plans that were reviewed and approved, but they didn't follow those. There were not transparent acts. The inspectors soft pedaled this and said, oh, it's just a dewatering problem. They didn't note to anybody that there was a ruptured aquifer, and it left the detection and the knowledge in the DNR many months down the line. The record that the DNR produced showed that that didn't occur until mid-June. There was not accurate reporting that alerted people to these. They did not follow their own rules, saying that there needed to be a change in construction plans or a change in the permits that would be allowed, and there needs to be a timely response. None of these things have happened since then. Levies and fines have been issued against Enbridge, $250,000 for the cost that the DNR has expected to incur on this. a reparations of $300,000 for the release of 24.2 million gallons of water. That's just a penny a gallon for the water that's been lost from this pristine aquifer. It just isn't adding up. In addition, they've fined them, or I'm sorry, they haven't fined them. They've asked them to put $3 million, a little over $3 million, in an escrow account that would be used for the restorations that are necessary if Enbridge can't follow it. They are limited by state statutes on how much they can fine them. So there's really no deterrence here. It's just paying for the costs of the damage. So what do we need to do? We think there needs to be a hard stop to all pipeline activities except independent inspection of the entire line. We should employ remote sensing detection of upwelling groundwater for the entire 330-mile line. We know that they've had a history of not revealing the problems that have occurred, and we're coming to the season once the ground freezes up. This water is upwelling at a temperature of about 45 degrees. It would be easy with a drone and some temperature monitors to see if we have other areas where aquifers are ruptured or where frac outs from the directional boring have broken out to the surface and are allowing surface water to flow out. There should be no further action on the pipeline. They should not be able to commission the line until the total damages have been assessed, the damages restored, fines and penalties for the unreported infractions. I'm going to turn it over to Laura about the frac outs and the spills, and another major issue that's only been related late in the process. What's most frustrating to me in kind of representing public interest is that none of these things are being revealed until the pipeline's done. This aquifer rupture occurred in January, and yet they didn't want to suffer a stop work order back then, so they have found ways to keep that from being in the public eye, to keep that from the regulators. It's the same with water appropriations, where back in June they revealed that they needed a 50-fold increase in their water appropriations, even during the middle of an extreme drought. And the same with the frac outs, that it wasn't until a couple months later that letters from Representative Hornstein and a number of legislators asked for the details about the frac outs. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura. You can take over the slides. And
Thanks, Jeff. And before I do want to say something about the timing of this, because actually I think from the records that DNR could have known on January 26th that this was happening, this aquifer breach, because one of the independent environmental monitors did note in the report at that time that there was an uncontrolled discharge at the dewatering. And we know that actually DNR was considering whether to increase that appropriations permit all through January, February, March, April, May. They were getting ready to approve Enbridge for extra water. And I think if they had maybe stopped and said, hey, wait, why do you need extra water? Why do you need 10 times more water than you thought? Is there anything wrong happening? I think they had the opportunity and they missed it. So I'm a little harder on the DNR. I think there was a failure of the backstop that we rely on with our regulatory agency. I don't think the system worked. So let me tell you about frac outs a little bit here. I hope, are you seeing a PowerPoint slide, Jeff? You are, drilling fluid spills, okay. So this is a diagram I made of one of the Mississippi River crossings. This is just a few miles from the headwaters at Lake Itasca. And you can see here, this photo was taken during construction. This is the temporary bridge that they built across the Mississippi River and the floodplain as they were drilling under the rivers. They were drilling 60 feet under and then pulled the pipe through. Now, a lot of times I heard state officials saying there were no spills in the river. But I want you to see this, the green dashes here are outlining the active floodplain of this river. And I've tried to show with these blue arrows that there's water moving through the whole floodplain. There's groundwater, there's a lot of water flow through the ground right next to a river. River flow and subsurface water flow are tightly connected. Now, these yellow X's are where 3 drilling fluid spills came all the way to the ground surface. So they're marked with X's. This is the biggest one here near the center of the photo, of this aerial photo. And again, I heard state staff telling citizens it wasn't in the river, but it was really, really close to the river. And this water is all connected. It's actually something that I hear Indigenous leaders talk about a lot also, is that groundwater and surface water are tightly connected in these kind of places. This is pretty basic hydrology. So if there were soluble chemicals in any of these any of these spills, it's possible that those would be moving with the flow of water through the floodplain and toward the river. We don't entirely know what these drilling muds are. NPCA and Enbridge repeatedly tell us that they're non-toxic. That's fine, but a lot of things are non-toxic. You know, French fries are non-toxic. It doesn't mean I want to dump a whole bunch in the river. It's not going to be good for the river. Non-toxic doesn't necessarily mean it's great. And actually, French fries maybe are toxic. I have no idea. MPCA doesn't tell us what's in those and also won't tell us if they're taking any samples. So I had citizens and water protectors and folks, landowners up there going out into the river and collecting samples and sending them to me because the state wouldn't tell anybody if they were collecting samples. As the Mississippi naturally meanders back and forth and floods over time, it's going to intercept these deposits. Drilling mud emplaced along the borehole may still be leaking upward. And even just yesterday, we got these photos, or a couple days ago, I guess, from Ron Tierney up north, who reports that he went out with his drone and took some photos. And I can't confirm that this is the Mississippi. This is right at that picture I was showing you. This torn up area is where their temporary bridge was. And this brownish color in the water looks a lot like drilling mud spills that we were seeing elsewhere. I can't confirm that it is without getting up there and without getting samples. I sure hope MPCA is up there taking samples. I have no confidence in that. And let's see, I'm gonna skip to this. So here's I tried to make a 3-dimensional image of this, of what's happening where the frac outs are. So this is that same area. Here's that biggest drilling fluid spill. Here's the drill rig setup. And they drilled their borehole 60 feet down under the Mississippi. We know that at three places, drilling mud from that borehole came all the way to the top. So there's a 60-foot column of drilling mud at those locations. I think it's very likely that there are other spill locations where the drilling fluid escaped the borehole itself, maybe didn't make it all the way to the surface, but surely are emplaced there in the floodplain. Again, we don't know if there are chemicals in there that could move out with the water. The mud itself, even if the mud is non-toxic, actually the particular mud that they use can be very irritating to freshwater mussels and bivalves. And so it can be, even though they call it just mud, it's actually not just mud as is in that river. It has specific, possibly very damaging characteristics. And as far as we know, I don't think anyone's doing any monitoring. At least they aren't telling us, and there's no evidence on the ground. I mean, there's no evidence of monitoring wells or anything out there. So again, this is a picture that Jeff showed you earlier. There were 28 locations where these frac outs or drilling fluids came to the surface. Most crossings where there was one had more than one. Here's a photo of Enbridge workers trying to clean up some frack out fluid that happened in one wetland of the Mississippi. I don't know if that's, I think that is the right date. Actually, I know that's the right date because people were sending me samples shortly after that event. Here's a table of showing you the different locations that NPCA reported frack outs, the dates that those happened, the number of releases, and the volume of fluid. Now, I asked NPCA staff, actually I called and talked to someone and asked specifically, like, can you tell me what Enbridge is required to do before they can continue drilling? Like once there's a frack out, do they need to stop? Do they need to do a geotechnical investigation? Do they need to turn over all their records of the pressure at this borehole so that you can look at it and see, you know, did they do something wrong? What's happened? Why did this frack out happen? And no one would tell me if Enbridge was required to do anything. And in some cases, they restarted drilling within 24, 48 hours, which is not enough time to do any kind of geotechnical investigation, I'll tell you that. Okay, so that's back to the artesian. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I think
we're going to turn it over then to Dawn Goodwin, and she's going to give us a little summary of the impacts on local communities.
Bonjour, I hope you can see me better and hear me. I was having trouble hearing you all. I don't know if anybody else had problems, but hopefully you can hear me well this time. Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Gagagayashik, Indigenous cause. That's my native name, which means everlasting wind. And I live here on White Earth, just about 15 miles from the Mississippi River, where these frack codes are. And I'm a co-founder of Rise Coalition and a representative of Indigenous Environmental Network. So the site you're looking at is our original Firelight first encampment, where we occupied that land for 8 days before being removed and cited for trespassing. What we found as we left is when we came back, the first witnessed frack out was on July 20th and discovered by our drone pilot, Ron Tierney, who is on the call with us and has additional footage for everyone. So he has that available for viewing. And so that was the first one that we witnessed on the ground. And he had some prior footage from July 7th that looked the same as frack out, but it had not been reported. So there's several frack out spots that we've discovered with the drone. And that was July 20th, July 30th, and then an unreported one on August 3rd. And then also now this footage from the 17th. And he's got additional footage in between those. And I see my camera's off, which is fine. I'm probably able to hear me better this way. And so this is a pattern of Enbridge rushing and not reporting, and then being so slow and not transparent. Because we were out there for days and we were wondering if is anybody even monitoring, who is watching. So apparently we did see some people that were independent monitors go out and come back, and apparently they did take samples. But as said, was Laura, we had gathered up samples, some of the people there at Firelight. At the second time when we were by the river and had to go out, either walking out. So even after we left, we had discovered some spots outside the river zone that was bubbling up in mercury on the sides, and we have some coverage and footage of that too, pictures. And so this was that's the Mississippi LaSalle. We call it headwaters because it's so close there. And we'll continue to monitor, and we'll be going out to the Clearwater River site tomorrow to monitor that area also. And so they were doing this all at one time. So it was really difficult to watch what was going on. So while they were doing the Mississippi, they were also drilling at Shell and Clearwater, 2 sites on the Clearwater River, the Red River, everywhere, drilling. And they're going so fast to try to get this done because they know it's a bad idea. They know it's a bad idea, but they continue. That was their preferred route for some reason. And my theory is they're trying to destroy our water. And no better way than a tar sands pipeline. The oil that sinks in water and is carcinogenic. And so this has been very taxing on our community. Our community members, some of them can't even go out to these sites because of the harassment that we get when we're out there. You don't even have to be locked down to equipment or anything like that. And just on the side of the road, and people harass us. And it's scary because they harass us by speeding and accelerating and showing that anger or hate towards us. And it does not feel good. You have to hold it together because you want to react, you want to be angry, but you know that's not going to get you anywhere. And so a lot of our community members can't even go out to these sites because it's hard to take that from people. Just being there and witnessing this and trying to keep an eye the best we can. And thankfully we have our drone pilot, Ron, and I thank him from the bottom of my heart for his work that he's done, continues to do. Because on the ground, it's difficult, you cannot see. So we depend on those eyes in the sky. And without it, we may not know what happened. The calcareous fen has called me all summer, and I did not know what was happening, but it was calling me. But I knew that that's a risky place to go. The people are not friendly. And our horse riders went through there yesterday and were harassed and chased by men. And a gun pulled on the young people on their horses through that area just yesterday. But nobody was charged with harassment, or these men were drunk and side by side, and nothing happened to them. So us putting our bodies out there in peace and prayer is even dangerous. This has affected our community. We have been invaded by Ember's workers. And it's so difficult to stay calm and not lash out at them for doing this work. And so that's what we are faced with. And have only been faced with it in a short time. I can imagine what my friends and relatives over in Fond du Lac feel, or Cass Lake with Ember's lines over there. And so it really worries me that they're going to move those other lines over into this new corridor and destroy another part of the 1855 treaty. We depend on these lands. This year we had this drought, and our lake that we depend on and get our rice from, the one I live next to, Lower Rice Lake, we did not have water and could not get out to that lake to harvest, so people had to travel. It was a hardship for some to be able to travel, but that was the only way you could get your rice. And that is important to us spiritually, and culturally, and mentally, to have that. I did not wasn't able to go berry picking because there was no berries, blueberries that is, and that's my thing. And so that part missing in me, that was my time, solitude in the summer. So that's one effect. And now these last years I haven't gone out much because I've been too absorbed. I call it hostage. My brain is being held hostage by Ember's bad plan and people's poor choices. I've been standing up and sort of hollering from the rooftops how horrible an idea this is, and that we do not support these lines going through our treaty territories. We need these treaty lands that the state believes that are theirs. It wasn't their right to give that away to a foreign corporation. So this is what we deal with. And our people have been oppressed for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we're still being oppressed. And that hurts. They don't want to listen to us, and that hurts. So all we have now is the people. And we just ask that you stand with us and stand strong and help us and give it your all. That's all we have left. And so if Ron is able to talk a little bit, I'd like to have him have at least a few at this time. Nico, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dawn. That was a moving testimony. I appreciate that Ron's available, and maybe we can have him address some questions. But we do want to get to the questions here, and I can't overstate the damage. We have a situation where a natural system that supported springs and fens with rich biodiversity that are culturally important and physically important for our environment have been breached, and now we have an unnatural spring breaking out of a pipeline excavation. If you can imagine the insult to the earth for that breach, and it's gone unabated for many, many months because of the inactivity of our state agencies. So what do we need to do? We need our state regulators to put a stop to all activities except the inspection and discovery of all of these problems. The DNR asked for the Enbridge to do a study and inspect the entire line for places where they had changed their construction practices and might have had other problems. We know that they aren't being forthcoming. This needs to be an independent review before any other activities should be allowed. We need our state elected officials to make the calls. We need our state representatives and senators and Governor Walz and Senator Klobuchar and Smith to call President Biden to tell him that these water permits should be abandoned. It was based on PCA water certifications and review of plans that apparently they had no intention of following. These are serious breaches that put our environment at risk. It did not undergo an environmental impact statement to consider possible oil spills or the breach of an aquifer and the impacts to the cultural importance from Indigenous communities or the long-term impacts to our environment. I'm going to turn it back to Sarah, and I think she'll moderate any questions. Thank you everyone for listening today.
Thank you so much to our presenters, Jeffrey Broberg, Laura Triplett, Don Goodwin. And I also want to thank Ron Turney for his amazing photos. He's with the Indigenous Environmental Network. He has been taking that amazing drone footage that's providing us images of what's happening in these places around the Mississippi River and rivers and wetlands and streams all across the pipeline route. So we're indebted to you for that, Ron. Thanks for being on this call as well. And your efforts are really instrumental to our ability to assess impacts on these rivers. I'm going to move into some questions. I've seen some come through the chat. I'm happy to have others. Please send these questions to me, and we can get as many as we can in here. Jeff, I think this one might have been in your presentation when you were talking about the quicksand and there was some a piece of equipment. Was that a photo of equipment that was going in at this particular location or a demonstration?
No, that was a demonstration of the risk that occurs, that this is an uncommon construction hazard, but when it happens, it's an emergency, and anybody that's dealt with this understands the emergency. This is not something that you ignore because the equipment and life, health, and safety could be at risk.
Okay, thank you. A second question was about the independent environmental monitors, and wondering if you could describe what exactly the independent environmental monitor is, who they're supposed to look out for, and what their role is. Are they private? Who are they employed by? Are either of you able to speak to that?
I can speak to that briefly, and Enbridge and the state made an agreement on an environmental monitoring plan back in 2019. It said they would be employed independent monitors that are a separate group of people that have a charge of recording environmental factors throughout the project. The monitors are required to write inspection reports and file those on a password-protected website that can be reviewed by the regulators. And they are required to report any places that there may need to be a significant change in project design or any significant changes that would require modifications of permits. Those are two of the principal requirements of the environmental monitors. They failed to do that in both instances with the rupture of the aquifer and the frac outs and the need for additional water appropriations, where they requested a 50-fold increase in the water appropriations. So we have a legacy of over a year of failures of the monitors bringing up the very issues that were raised as concerns and are now under debate once the pipeline is done. These issues should have been addressed back in January for the aquifer. We don't know how long back for the frac outs. And from the beginning, for the water appropriations in the middle of the extreme drought.
I'd like to say something else about the independent environmental monitors too, and tie it to something that Dawn mentioned just now, that the DNR seems to have plenty of staff to police the peaceful protesters who are up there. And I've seen it too. Dawn's right. They come screaming up in their official vehicles and they get out with their badges and their walkie-talkies and they are ready. There's seem to be plenty of DNR staff there to protect Enbridge's access to their sites. But on the other hand, the state didn't have enough of their own employees to do the environmental monitoring, to actually police these situations that might be having criminal environmental damage going on. So that disparity, I think, that Dawn is talking about is really striking. And I really, really do think Dawn and Ron Turney and all the other water protectors who are up there with their eyes open and keeping their eyes on these things, because, man, it's been, I think we wouldn't have known a lot of this stuff if the people there and Dawn and Ron and the group up there hadn't been watching.
I'd like to comment on that as well, that I've been a construction manager in the past where I've had crews of inspectors looking at and filing reports. It's important to look at those reports every day. You can't get a week behind and catch up. In this instance, Laura mentioned that the DNR could have known about this as early as January 26th. In fact, they didn't come to the awareness of it until June 15th. And they didn't sit down by their own record and review all of the inspection reports until July 8th. Months and months and months of a massive flow out of this aquifer without using the tools that were at hand that were supposed to be the protections for our environment.
And I'll say one last thing, and maybe that means our state agencies are underfunded. Maybe they have been underfunded and undersupported too long and the staff are being asked to do too much. And I think that is maybe also another place we need to take some action and help these agencies out.
Thank you so much. We're getting a number of questions, which is fabulous, but I know we'd love to hear from Ron Turney as well. So Ron, can I turn it over to you for a screen share for a few minutes, and then we'll hop back to the questions?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ron Turney.
Hi, Ron. Thank you.
I want to share some footage that I've gotten. I'm up there almost every day, and it's pretty devastating. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the frack out and how it started. So here's a this is a picture from July 21st. I'm a member IAM media team and from the White Earth Nation. Quick recap, July 20th, there was a frack out. And the 21st, we had Jamie Pinkham from the Army Corps come and walk the site with us. And when I went back, I can see footage, as you can see in the left there, on July 19th at 1:40 p.m., you can see the mud in the marsh already, the day before they even responded to it. So July 20th, we're having an event for Rights of the Mississippi. And in the background, you can see the actual Enbridge workers responding to that spill that I found the day before. They're looking at it, they're pointing at it, and they send out the cleanup trucks. That water truck almost ran through our crowd. Here's another timeline here. Is July 21st, Enbridge came out with their statement and MPCA sided with them, saying water protectors were spreading misinformation. We had Carrie Chesnick and them grab a sample and it was sent off to the MPCA to get tested. MPCA rep, we were speaking with a rep there. They didn't go public, but they sent us emails And they told us what the additive was. It was Power Pack L, made by Polyselect, and it's supposed to stay away from waterways, sewers, and low areas. Melissa Kuski is that person from the MPCA that emailed us and confirmed our sample. July 23rd, Enbridge takes down their post on their website. MPCA takes the tweet down, but we have the evidence. They can't hide this from us. They can't hide it from the public. You see, this is some of our images from IEN. You can see them throwing sandbags over, vacuuming out. Here's another spill on July 30th, top left. There's an environmental monitor there. There's a senior Enbridge worker, and that's the cleanup crew. This is July 30th, and that's the 4th frack out I've witnessed. There was only 2 reported frack outs by the MPCA at this location. So all these frack outs you're going to see are additional ones that are unreported. August 3rd, I found a chemical sheen on the tributary leading into the Mississippi, and that's downhill from the east drill at the Mississippi. Top left is a picture of the sheen, and the tributary is in the top right image. You can see the drill in the top right. So that entire area is full of that sheen, that chemical on it. We tried, I don't know if testers were able to get out there, but I tried to transfer info and send info out, share images, everything I could. There's a big issue with them. They don't report frack outs. They don't report all of them. So in the top left image, you see them vacuuming up frack out fluid. Then they cover it back up. They put sandbags in the hole, and they cover it back up with the easement. Drilling during restricted dates. So if you compare the data to the drill fluid releases reported to MPCA and their water body crossing table, you can see that there's a restriction from April 1st to June 30th when there shouldn't be any drilling. But they have a June 25th frack out at this location of 6,000 to 9,000 gallons. Why are they drilling? We have video footage of them drilling on June 23rd at 3:30 a.m. So they're drilling during a fishery restriction that's clearly stated in their drilling table. Another issue was Enbridge using a harmful additive near a waterway. It's kind of like cheating, you know. The Power Pack Select L is used to harden the sand encasing or whatever material they're going through so it doesn't collapse. Cleanup. So Power Pack Select L, the cleanup recommendations, as you can see, bottom left there says scoop and remove. This is how they left it, and it's still like this. It's been diluted many times over, and I'll show you recent footage.
And remember that actually continues, that likely continues as a column many, many feet down underground. So it's not just a puddle at the surface, it's a big column of mud most likely, or some larger volume of it down there. Not you, Ron. Everybody else remember that. I know Ron knows this.
So here's the puddle of that spill that you see, that big, massive gray spill. This is the chemicals coming up from 60 feet down. Every time it rains, it pushes more up. It's turning like a rusty brown color. This has been sitting here since June, and it just keeps getting darker and darker. This is in the marsh, right next to where the bridge was. So you can see in the top left, they still have the easement in here. This image is from, let's see here, September 4th. And you can see the brownish discoloration. It's the same as this color over here as the big frack out. So there's a major drill, there's a release fluid underneath this. When they tore up the easement and lifted it up, it's still coming up today. And I have daily footage of being much worse. So what you've seen there is nothing what you're about to see.
Ron, this is Jeff Prober. Can I ask a question here? That do you have the capacity to do any thermal imaging with this? One of the techniques that we found geologically in the past is the upwelling groundwater, wherever it is coming out at 45 degrees. And once the ground starts to freeze, those areas are easy to detect. Do you know, do you have any of that capacity to do those kind of detections where these problems could
I have a thermal drone. I need a FLIR camera for that. So on the left here, there's the major frac out from July 20th. And you can see it's still coming up under the easement also right there. Down near the river, not so much. It's been pretty clear right there. But further up here is across the river on the east side of the drill. It's another cleanup and containment. The east drill's up on the hill there.
Ron?
In some of these videos, you can actually still see it bubbling up here. This is the oily sheen on top. And this is after they've had swamp buggies. They've contracted with a local company to drive through this area back and forth. And I actually followed them back to their residence in Poseida, Minnesota. They run through with 3 of them and they try to mix it in with the swamp. And then you see cleanup trucks out there hosing them off. So we followed them all the way home. It's a small little company, and they have about 6 little swamp buggies that they rent out, and they just drive through this area here. And so the footage from today actually shows tire tracks all through this. So they're just mixing it up with the marsh. You can see all the discoloration in the water here. And these are all raw video files, unedited. It's still coming up, and it's an ongoing disaster out here.
Ron, I think if we could give you a standing ovation right now, we would. So if everyone who has the ability to just give your thanks to Ron for this dedication to giving us a view of what's happening. We're indebted to you. Thank you very much. And thanks for sharing, for being out there and for sharing that with us today.
Yep, I'm out there every day and looking out for the water for all of us.
Thank you. I know some people have a little bit of, maybe some legislators have been with us and have left. There are others who are needing to leave. I'm getting some questions about what is a good next step. Is there a joint letter? What's the best way to keep applying pressure on state regulators? And I could open that question up to Laura and Jeff. If you want to toss it back to me, you can.
I'm just a scientist. I need you. Go, Sarah.
We know actions that need to be taken, and it really is a hard stop on any future action until all of this problem has been assessed. Ron has shown us the scope. Laura has shown us this happened from beginning to end. How can we allow this to continue to occur and plan to put oil in that pipeline without knowing whether we have ongoing problems with our water?
And I think one of the things you're pointing out for me too is it's not just the ongoing problems, but the fact that the company in charge of those problems, the one who's created that, has not been forthcoming, has been part of hiding it, has not been interested in doing what is best to rectify a situation, but has been interested in trying to hide it so that other things that they are in need of happen. And that includes getting an expanded water permit for 5.5 billion gallons for dewatering. It includes just being able to finish construction of the pipeline without regard to the kind of damage that's going on. So I'm so grateful for your ability to bring these issues to us so we can say, you know, through this construction process, Enbridge has not shown themselves to be a reliable partner in the planning, in the execution, or in the transparency needed to have confidence that a major construction project is going to be taken care through the communities that it is going through. So I think serious questions have been raised throughout this construction process, but are particularly peaking now. I see a question from Senator Marty. And I'm wondering if I can get you unmuted.
There, thank you, Sarah.
Senator Marty.
Thank you. First of all, the presentations were all excellent. I'm wondering if there were so many things in there where MPCA and so on were giving inaccurate information out that we had information showing how wrong it was. Is somebody able to put together a letter that we should, because we should be confronting the two commissioners and so on, saying, you know, what, we want a response to this, a direct response on specific errors or omissions or intentional falsehoods. I mean, I think we have to hold the agencies accountable because they're the ones who are supposed to be holding Enbridge accountable. Is there somebody who could do that, maybe, who could help pull together that? I think a lot of legislators on this call would like that.
Yeah, I think there's a team of science folks who've been keeping a list of these over and over and over problems. We could help start compiling that.
Senator Marty, I've produced a report that includes a chronology of all of these issues going back into 2019 that might be helpful. And I think Sarah can post that in the chat and put it on their website for your use as well. Thank you.
And then I wonder if perhaps Dawn, Goodwin, and Ron could start to make a list. I mean, it's going to be pages and pages long, but maybe from their perspective right on site, if we start putting these lists together, I agree that could be really powerful.
Thank you. Another question from Sydney Jordan earlier, and she had to leave at 3 o'clock, but was about what are the laws that we need to be changing to allow for greater penalties. Just there will be a series of what kinds of laws need to be changed, and I think that's a good question for people to be thinking on. Thinking about and being in communication with. Because our intention was to leave you about 3 o'clock, and I know we're over that, but I want to just raise a couple people have been bringing up how you communicate with state leaders and how you communicate with the press and how you communicate with each other about these serious issues so they continue to be raised until they are addressed. And with that, is there a final question from anyone right now? I worry that I haven't gotten everything out of the chat that I've needed to. Well, in that case, maybe it's okay. Would it be all right if I just while I focus on putting the document that Jeff just referenced into the chat for people, I'd love it if you could just, Jeff, and then Laura, and Don, I know we've had you with us, and I know sometimes the audio is a little hard, but if our presenters just had a 30-second wrap up for us to take with us as we continue through our day in this work.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, serious problems that created hazards even to the workers on the site, and let alone the impact to our water resources. To breach an aquifer that has sustained itself since the end of the glaciation, and to change the profile of that could harm environments that have evolved with an amazing richness and diversity that are groundwater dependent, are serious issues that we're not taking serious enough. So please contact the people that can make the decisions. Thank you for all your attention today.
As citizens, I think it's really powerful when you show up for this kind of meeting and want to hear from different voices what's really happening on the ground. I think all of us in Minnesota need to be really concerned right now about what are the priorities of our environmental regulatory agencies. We need to and I mean, yes, writing letters, telling your elected officials that you care about this. Someone asked about protests. Yeah, if there are protests, writing individual emails. I think the more of us who speak up and say, what is going on? Here's what I thought you were doing for us, for our state, but here's what I see you doing. What's the problem? How are we going to fix that? I think there does need to be some bigger, longer term momentum to try and correct some of these systemic problems that have led us to this place. And yeah, like Jeff says, we need to stop the pipeline right now until we get this figured out. Pull these permits. Don't commission this pipeline until we get some straight answers from everybody involved and really feel like we are ready to move forward if that's where the state's going to go. We are not ready right now.
Thanks, Laura. Dawn?
Bonjour. Thank you all for coming and listening today. Our people's future depends on stopping these pipelines, not only from spills, but also climate change. So thank you all. Join us, rise up and protect all that is sacred. Which